A global warm welcome to our third community design chat today here from Amsterdam or San Diego on the internet. And I'm located in Amsterdam myself, but today's guest will be from San Diego, California. There she is. So we'll be inviting her momentarily and we open the doors. So anyone who sees this, welcome. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, how are you?
That was very smooth.
I know, I was like kind of panicking, but I'm like, okay, this is totally gonna work.
So welcome. Let me open the space for a moment, and then I will learn from you just as much because I know you have done so many more of these live streams. So this is a community design chat, meaning with the community, for the community, anyone who's joining, you're part of this. Your questions are welcome. Your energy is welcome. And yeah, I'm doing this to build the community beyond San Diego, into the world, beyond the continent. And have done this since 2015. So some people may know me, some people meet me for the first time. And I want this to be participatory, so at the same eye level. And I see there's hearts sparkling here. So thank you for hearing me. Today we're talking with you, CEO of Diversity by Design and founder behind the amazing project Inclusion First. Yes. And yeah, you're here and I'll let you introduce yourself, but I'm so excited to understand a little bit more within this half hour of what we can do with design for anti-racism. I hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Julika. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to have this conversation. And so my name is Carrie Sawyer, and I'm the CEO of Diversity by Design. And we use design thinking to help companies design more equitable business outcomes. So that's how we're entering the fray when it comes to trainings and workshops and teaching people how to create systemic change. Now today we're going to be talking mostly about the Inclusion First project, which is an idea that I had almost a year ago to create a safe space for people to come and ask questions about anti-racism. Mm-hmm. And I know, after the murder of George Floyd, a lot of people were looking around wondering like what they could do. Mm-hmm. And for me, I wanted to do something, but I also wanted to not have to like design a whole course or like do all this planning and do all these things. So I was just like, well, what would happen if we got together and just answered questions? And so a friend and I, we started just answering questions and showing people what it looks like to talk about race, what it looks like to be wrong, what it looks like to have these discussions. And so, Julika, when we invited people to submit questions, very much like what we're doing here today on this. And when I got that first list of questions, there was 25, and I looked down and my design researcher mind was like, oh my gosh, these questions are data. If I could collect a ton of these questions, then I could study and analyze what the main things people were wrestling with, and then we could create solutions and do some more iteration, participatory design, all these different things. So my brain was going on hyperdrive. And so I started to do this webinar weekly for months, just to gather questions, but then also to provide the opportunity for people to ask questions about race and anti-racism and get answers as well.
Wow. I mean, I see that this is clearly coming from your heart and also from your experience, especially in the last year. And I'm going to kind of summarize this always a bit. That's a little bit the role of me as a host, going slow. I need to go slow so that my head doesn't go ahead. I connect this to my experience. So if you're seeing this also as the people that are listening now or later, ask a question as well. You make this very safe also to say, in your whole language, you always say, start your journey with a question, ask a question. So that's really incremental, I think very smart also in breaking it down, something so complex, and that you're opening the room. What is your role? So you're saying you founded this with a friend, and you're also with Diversity by Design, and design is a language that you speak. So tell me a little bit more, what you do as a design researcher or as a person in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And so right now I'm playing the dual hat between running the Inclusion First project and then doing consulting work for Diversity by Design. And I've been doing user experience design since officially 2010 2002, 2003, probably unofficially a little bit before that. And so, you know, I loved how you said, like, this is something that you live. Like, once you start to look at the world through this lens of design and design thinking and human-centered opportunities, like, you can't unsee it. And so it kind of comes into everything that you do. And one of the things that I was most excited about once I started to explore a path of using my skills in diversity, equity, and inclusion was really that this wasn't a space where people were applying a human-centered lens or a design thinking lens at all. And so in that, there's an opportunity to come up with totally different outcomes, create a totally different experience for people as they're going through this. And so that's really what I offer in a lot of my consulting services. Very much like, you're the subject matter expert and I'm guiding you with my knowledge that I have. And that's kind of, as a user experience consultant, whether you're internal to a company or not, that's kind of like your role, right? So this very much collaborative experience.
Yeah, and I still have in mind that you introduced yourself also as someone who comes from the world of information architecture. So you go back to information architecture, and then we go forward into user experience, and then you call this data. So in a way it is data, but it's data out of the heads and experiences of people. So not really separate from them. What is an example of a question that moved you, or a sample question that you often give as as speaking for your project? What is the simple? I know they're all on your social media platforms, so anyone is curious to answer them one by one. But what is an example of a question that comes at you?
It's so funny. I always have questions around me, so I'm just gonna like look for one like right now, literally.
Immersed in them. Yeah.
It's really interesting because people ask questions about so many things. And so at this point, I've collected almost 700 questions on anti-racism. And I've looked at them, done all my categorizing, post-it noting, and come up with like 12 main categories that people tend to ask questions in. And the very first one is actually around understanding racism, just at a kind of basic and fundamental level. Like, most people don't really understand exactly what it is, have a difficult time kind of articulating it, and definitely aren't able to explain it to people. So you're having these conversations and you're in these discussions, and you're like, I don't even have the words, right? So there are a lot of questions around that. So an example of a couple of those questions. So that is so racist is a term that I hear daily, especially in today's environment, as many people are examining race issues. Can you give us a solid definition of racist so we know when someone is actually racist or if someone is just being an idiot? Does intention matter? Right? So, I mean, it's such a great question. And then like another one is, why is anti-racism not commonplace? Why do we struggle so much as a society to treat each other equally and without prejudice? And of course, there's a whole history behind that, let alone thinking about, you know, systemic issues and how we approach the building of systems and how we pay attention to how different groups are navigating those. There's so many things. And one of the things that I love about these questions is each question is so layered and nuanced. Like a question I get all the time is like, should I use the term Black or African American? And you would think that that's just an easy question to answer, but that's like a 7-minute discussion. Even something as simple as that. So all of these complex layered questions, and I love digging into them because of those layers. Like, what are they really asking? What is it? What are the gaps in the knowledge that we have the opportunity to fill as we're exploring not just the answers, but what the needs are underneath? And so as a user experience person, that's what we're always looking at. We're always deciphering, like, what is the real need under the thing that someone is asking, right?
And what also strikes me as someone who's from Germany, who speaks English comfortably, not Dutch so comfortably yet, is also the lens. I mean, I'm immensely grateful for those 10 years I've lived in the US and even understood this topic a little bit more from the inside of the country, from the proximity to people, because I think you mentioned that your project right now focuses more on US based centered questions, because otherwise it would get quite wide and culture would be another one. But to put even that perspective in that as well makes it maybe a little bit more complicated. So you mentioned categories, 12 categories. One is the one of what are we even talking about, defining it. That's understandable. Anything else? One that you connect the most with, something where your heart is especially in?
I think that there's two, like the two next ones are really important. And so the second one was second most asked like theme of questions is like, how do I talk about race? So how do I talk about race with my friends, my family, people I know, people I don't know, kids, people at work, like people I'm trying to convince of something. And so this like express need of I need tools and confidence also to be able to talk about this when it comes up so that I don't have to be afraid of saying the wrong thing, offending someone. Of course, there's no way to control whether that happens or not, but
Yeah.
still this need. And then the third most asked theme was, how do I take action? And of course, that's the thing that most people want to do first. They want to skip all the, like everything, like how do I take action? And so that also, like whether it's action at work, at home, I mean, it's really interesting because most of the time people think that the main thing that they need to do is like interrupt the racism that's happening around them, like interpersonally. But racism is so subtle and so built in that really the best place to start is to really understand what is the racism that's inside of us as individuals, because we're living in this society, in this world, we're getting all of these messages and we've internalized things that we're just not aware of, right? Like unconscious bias, unconscious prejudice, unconscious racism, for sure. And so as we're looking at the world trying to fix things, if we still have that inside of us, then we're fixing systems with the same lens that cause those systems to be discriminatory, unequitable, etc. So really starting with yourself and starting that learning journey, starting to uncover where you have beliefs and ideas that aren't in alignment with inclusion and equity. And because we all do, whether you're Black, white, green, or purple, you have these ideas that you've been bombarded with. So when you're thinking about taking action, how do you start with yourself and then start to look around you? And it's more than just, oh, someone called someone a bad word and I'm going to stand up for that. Or in the unfortunate environment we're in right now, it's more than unfortunate, like seeing someone being attacked because, they're Asian or some other, some other race or ethnicity or religion or gender identity. It's more than those things, which don't happen that often in like one person's experience. It's more about looking at the systems that we live within. So
that's actually what I realized I needed to do with this conversation as well. Instead of getting hyperactive in the surrounding, was looking inside and reading and researching what you've put out there. And you created a powerful tool with these questions. I've asked 3 already, and I know you don't need the answers from Europe yet, but this process of asking myself questions and also being like you said to me, it's like going to the gym. You got to get in there, it's gonna hurt. And asking these questions, they're not hurting, but they're uncomfortable. They're like, why do I even ask this? Is this the right thing to ask? So I think that's part of all of them. And what I so appreciate about the Design Lab, and you're someone who's, I think, within kilometers of them in California, in Southern California, and anyone in Europe who I hope will watch this too, in Amsterdam. So think about a town nestled to the Mexican border. There's this Design Lab. I know they're really active in this. So anything that comes from the director, the previous director, Don Norman, and now Dr. Mai, is very proactive, very, I think, really role modeling in this field. And I try to bring this back to the Netherlands, the TU Delft, and say them, look, this is a statement someone in a position of power can make. And I literally copy the text. I say, can I please share this? Because this is so important to speak up and use your position of power and privilege, and not wait a year until you check it by 5 officers.
Oh, absolutely.
So the Design Lab. You've had a conversation with Donald Norman. So what is a little bit what is your recollection from that interaction with him on talking about this topic?
First of all, it was so amazing because, he's like a movie star to the design world, right? So the fact that I was, number one, that he took my email, that he said yes, I was just totally blown away. I read his books, he's like an icon. So after that part, I calmed down after my fangirl phase. I really appreciated Don's openness about his journey with discovering and reading and studying anti-racism, studying racism, and a lot of that, I'm not sure what he's done previous in his life. Probably this isn't the first time he's thought about it, for sure. But with the murder of George Floyd, it sparked this, this deep dive. And so he read all these books and had all these conversations, was really doing his due diligence, and what he came to, and I'm just paraphrasing his words, he's like, I didn't realize this, but I am racist. And We all are. It's
Yeah.
this word racism, like that's not a pejorative. It's like, it's a fact because of the systems that we're in. And being a white male in a position of power, yes, of course, like, but not, he wasn't saying it in an accusatory way. He was saying it in a, like, I've realized something way, and I've done all these things intentionally or not done things unintentionally that have created these different outcomes. Right. And so also not using your power when you can. So what I loved about this was his vulnerability and like just honesty, because that's the first step in changing anything, is acknowledging that there's a problem. And so he acknowledged it. And now what is he going to do about it? He's not like, oh, I'm so terrible. Oh, tears, tears, tears. He was like, wow, I've learned a lot, and I've learned that I'm behaving in a certain way, and that's not okay. And I'm going to do something about it. I'm not saying he was going out like calling people like this is about systemic racism. This is about privilege and how you're using it for good or for ill, and even for ill unintentionally, because we're going through our world and we might be stepping on people, stepping on things, allowing things to happen around us that we're just not aware of, or we don't know how to interrupt. And so I so appreciated his honesty, and then just sharing like what his journey was like. And he is like on the hunt for how he can create systemic change, how he can bring as many people together, as many groups, how he can use his position of power to create change in this world. And that is all we can ask from anyone. And it doesn't matter, you don't have to be a Don Norman to create change around you. You can be you wherever you are and influence the people who are closest to you in a positive way, creating more inclusion and more equity. So I thought it was an incredible lesson, and having him say it from his voice, from the way that he looks, how he represents in the world, people will hear it in a different way, right? Different people will connect to his story. So yeah, amazing.
Yeah, I think that there's things like this increase my respect for the leadership there, as well as for any role models. And then silence, I think, is in this same context also something that becomes even louder if people remain silent or don't say anything or wait. Since we're talking on a social media platform, also Instagram, which is contested for its own reasons, how is this context of social media in which you're also operating, which I'm choosing, how is this conducive for this, or makes it a little bit more complicated? Maybe for designing for antiracism and allyship. Also it's something that can easily be shared, but maybe tell me a little bit about this platform or the forum.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the biggest dangers of any social media platform is that your message can end up being performative, right? So that means like you're posting these things, but what change is posting actually creating? Is that the only thing that you're doing? Now, if you have a huge platform, you have a huge brand, and have a huge name, you're absolutely creating change just in modeling, talking about these things. But if you turn your Instagram or your Facebook like to a black screen, like there's way more to it than that. And so how do you use these platforms to amplify the work that you're doing, or amplify the work of other people that is impactful, versus just like posting quips or different things that you're saying? Yes, I guess it's great for people to see that how you feel about it, but in most cases we're preaching to the choir. Like the people who are following us as just individuals like are likely like-minded, especially now. I mean, I know so many people who had to purge their social media because I'm not trying to see crazy messages about Trump or about this or about that. Like we just can't, right? So we're preaching to the choir, right? So how are you using your voice to amplify beyond that, and are you doing anything else?
I think this is a great answer, and I also want to disagree a bit, because I think, or at least I think that may make this chat a little bit more interesting. So yes, you had this question of performativism, like do I just do it for the show and put up imagery that makes something appear more inclusive, but do I really think about it this way from the core? That's a very good question, and also for big companies to dig a little bit deeper, like what are they doing, how they're hiring, how they're phrasing something, or is this really just on the social media platform? But in my time at Planned Parenthood in San Diego, when I was on their marketing team, they also said, well, you're not going to convince the hardcore people on the outside, but there's still a receptive large middle of people that are open, but are waiting for the impulse. They're waiting for someone to speak up. They're waiting for the inspiring examples. So even if our followership is here maybe more aligned with what we do, I think there's still people on the fringes that are willing to listen up. So I think anyone who sees this, or anyone who wants to start anti-racist journey, which is one of the tiles that I shared from you, I think this is one way. I mean, to try and widen that area of influence that we can have.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We need to try like all the different things that we can do. I think, you know, if this is the only thing that you're doing, or if you don't really have like a following, like Planned Parenthood, they have people who are following them for totally different things and hearing an anti-racist message, right? And so there's a huge opportunity there. If you're have a brand, have a following where they're following you because you're a life coach, you have an opportunity to send these messages to people who may or may not agree with you. Absolutely look for those opportunities. And that, I mean, it does matter because it's like this passive content that we're consuming. But it gets into our minds and our psyches, and hopefully will tip those people in the middle. And I totally agree. That's another like danger of the social media platforms, is like getting into Instagram or Facebook fights. Just don't like
no.
See it happening. Like, it is insane, but just, you know, it's really not for that. This is not the place. It's a waste of your energy. Honestly, I used to advertise on Facebook for my Antiracism for Allies webinars, and I literally just said, come ask your question about anti-racism. And like one day I came back to check to see how my ad was performing, and there was like hundreds of people who were like fighting with each other on it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like what is going on here? Why?
I don't think it leads so often to convincing persuasion. I'm not that I'm a master of persuasion, but I am a psychologist by training, and I do this thing called design your life. And I really like to just also think about it like how to design your life, not just to be blissful, but with the values that we stand for. And I really believe in sustainability and in a future that is viable, and then also designed for equity. So in a way, this topic, design for anti-racism, falls within this umbrella term of design for equity. Absolutely. And so tell me a little bit maybe about this for someone who hears those terms for the first time, or how they're nested with one another, or how they connect and support.
Yeah, absolutely. So anti-racism is really taking an action to like interrupt racism. It's not just about not being racist, because if you think about racism like a wheel that's rolling, literally in some cases rolling over people, pointing and being like, oh, look, there's racism, doesn't do anything to stop it. You have to like get something in those spokes, like figure out how to block that wheel. And so that is the job of an anti-racist. That is what anti-racism is all about. This like active, it's very much like allyship. Like allies don't watch from the sidelines. Allies get their hands dirty, they get in. And so we're thinking about equity. This really is about creating spaces and systems and communities where people are getting what they need to thrive, to be happy, to have opportunities. And that really differs from this idea of like equity and equality. We see those two things compared a lot. Equality is giving everyone the same thing. Equity is giving people what they need. And one metaphor that I heard that was really helpful for me was like the idea of shoes, giving like 6 different people, all different sizes, weights from all over the world, like the same size 7. All right. Well, if you're not size 7, not helpful. That's equality, right? You give everyone the same thing. Why aren't you happy? Because I wear size 9, or I'm a child, I wear size 2. Like, I need the shoe that fits me. And so equity is all about creating that shoe that fits that person in that system, whether that is in education, in healthcare, at work, at home, all of these different things. And so we have the opportunity to get in there and figure out where are these systems broken, and how can we redesign them so that people are traversing them in the same way. Like an example of, I feel like it's Black mothers are like 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than white mothers. Like, why? These 2 different groups are having totally different experiences going through the same system. That means there's something broken in that system. And you can see that in, I mean, every single system that exists. There are outcome disparities based on gender, based on race, based on whether you speak English as a first language, whether you identify as differently as far as gender expression or your sexual orientation, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a lot of work to do in looking at the systems, and are the outcomes equitable or not?
Yeah, that's a good one. to talk about parenthood, or I'll be talking soon to the Maternity Care Coalition in Philadelphia. So it's about exactly the well-being of Black mothers, is how that is different and how can that be, and that is systemic. And I wanted to throw out like these big terms: equity, why not fairness? Like I used to be intimidated by it more, but of course they can all be defined. But it's also, I think, okay to when you have a conversation, say what's the difference between equity? What's the difference between equity and fairness? And to really just ask what you don't know about, and to say, hey, can you explain to me right now what you understand with racism, anti-racism, or allyship? So what's then, I'm thinking about advocacy. What's the difference then between allyship and someone being an advocate, or is it pretty much the same thing?
I would consider like allyship, advocacy, like being a champion. These are kind of all words that are used synonymously, and it is about like getting out there, getting your hands dirty. You're using your position, your power, your privilege to, I don't want to say the word help, but stand in solidarity with other groups who are different than you. And that might be by amplifying their voices. That might be creating space so that they can have room to talk. That might be talking in a space where they are not allowed to be because of the systemic barriers. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but you are using your power, your person, to go and advocate, to champion for, to be an ally with these other people. And we all go in and out of different roles of allyship. For example, like I'm an anti-racism ally when I think about standing up with our brothers and sisters of Asian descent, right? So for stopping Asian hate.
Good example.
I'm not an ally when I'm talking about, anti-Blackness, because I am Black, like I'm in, So we're all moving in and out of those. We have the opportunity to be allies for so many groups.
And you again designed something so sneakily good with this weekly award of the Allyship Awards. So anyone can go to your website again or your platform and award someone. It's just spreading this positive energy, and thereby reinforcing a system of making it wider, of opening the door. Like, who in your network is someone who just does a really good job of going out of their bucket into another field and opening the door and standing up for someone else. Is there an example where you think like, wow, this was maybe the first, or something you haven't even thought about or heard about? Anything that surprised you in the Allyship Awards?
Yeah, so the Inclusion First Ally Awards is for anyone who's creating more inclusion in the world, and we're trying to get this out bigger and broader. A lot of the awards people get are like pay to play. This is not a pay to play. We are literally giving free shout outs to people because we want to amplify the work that they're doing, and we also want to send a message that good work is happening all around us all the time. And so I'm excited because the program is growing and it's starting to become people that I don't know directly. It's like people that you know, or people that know you that know someone else. And so there's a lot of different examples. Like, we're not like, oh, you have to be a diversity inclusion practitioner. Like, I've recognized a salon for being incredibly inclusive, for having a mission that is to build community within their neighborhood. No matter what you look like, they're going to make you beautiful. It's not just about one thing. You could be a consultant. You could be working in childcare. I recognized a woman who does autism support for, families of color. Like, it literally is everything, because racism and all the other isms are everywhere. And if you're fighting that, then we want to recognize you for the work that you're doing.
And it is also this positivity that I find that for me was always something I found, especially in the US, this smiling and positivity and even this feedback of, that's a great question, let me think about it. So for me, that's like my favorite thing when I talk to people from the US culture, is like this positive instant feedback is to connect this a little bit back to the community design chat. So we have, we're almost out of time. Oh, wow.
It goes so fast.
Let me wrap this up, and then it will continue online. What are some ways in which institutes, knowledge institutes, or even organizations can support you? So they can hire you, I would assume, on design and diversity by design. But what are ways that you can be, from someone in the network of watching this, yeah, be an ally to your project and to your two businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest thing is to start to share. I really want to get awareness built around the work that we're doing, that we're collecting these questions, that we are going to be creating amazing solutions for people to use and on their anti-racism journey. And so sharing that, asking a question, I'm always collecting questions. You can
Yeah.
go to the inclusionfirstproject.org to ask a question at any time. That is super helpful as well. We're just starting to collect donations, which is awesome. I'm working to stand up an institute, an official research institute. So to grow the Inclusion First Project into the Inclusion First Institute that studies anti-racism full time and goes through our design process to come up with new, novel, innovative solutions that actually change things for the better. So we're in the process of all of these things. I'm starting a podcast. We're going to be getting sponsors for that. So there's so many things, but definitely come and join our mailing list so that we can keep you up to date on what we're doing and how you can continue to support the work of the Inclusion First Project.
That's wonderful. So it doesn't matter whether you're thousands of kilometers away or miles in time zones. It's really, people can donate and vote with their dollars. They can contribute something that's not monetary, a question. So anyone who's watching this, head over and ask. Your question will be unique. I'm convinced. No one will ask the question that you will be typing in this field. Yeah, and I mean, you'll let us know if it's exactly the same one. And yeah, let's wrap this up for here to keep it bite-sized. Thank you so much for your morning half hour.
This was awesome. I had so much fun. Thank you so much for this conversation and for letting us get the word out there.
Absolutely. Goodbye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.